"Your son doesn't deserve a new bike," Mom said. "He refused to share his old one with your brother's boy." My kid had fixed that bike for months. I stayed quiet. Canceled the $7,200 barbecue I'd planned for my brother's kids. Instead, I took my son to buy a custom bike. We posted a clip. An hour later, my brother texted, "We need TO talk." My name is Anthony. I'm 38 years old, and I've been a plumber for nearly 2 decades. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that fixing broken pipes is easier than fixing broken family dynamics. For most of my adult life, I was the dependable one. The brother who showed up when rent was short. The son who wired money when mom's car needed fixing. The uncle who funded birthday parties, bought school supplies, and made sure my brother Jacob's 3 kids never went without. I had one son. Edward was 11, and he was everything to me. His mother left when he was 3, decided motherhood wasn't her calling, and I raised him alone. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house with a garage I'd converted into a workspace. That garage became Edward's favorite place. He'd sit on an overturned bucket, handing me wrenches while I fixed sinks and toilets for clients, asking 1,000 questions about threads and joints and water pressure. Jacob, my younger brother, had a different life. He worked in sales, made decent money, but somehow never had enough. He had 3 boys, ages 7, 9, and 13. I loved my nephews, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice the pattern. Every major expense in their lives somehow became my responsibility. Baseball league fees, summer camp deposits, new tablets for school. Jacob would call, voice tight with manufactured stress, and I'd transfer the money before he finished asking. Mom lived 10 minutes from me, 15 from Jacob. She'd raised us alone after Dad passed when I was 12, and she wore that struggle like a badge. She loved both her sons, I never doubted that, but somewhere along the way, she'd decided Jacob needed more protection, more grace, more help. I was the strong one, the one who could handle things. Jacob was sensitive. Jacob had 3 kids. Jacob deserved support. I never complained. Family is family, right? That's what I told myself every time I checked my savings account and saw it smaller than it should have been. Edward didn't know the details, but he knew we lived simply. He never asked for much. When he turned 10, he found an old mountain bike at a yard sale, frame rusted, chain broken, tires flat. He paid for it himself with money he'd earned helping our elderly neighbor rake leaves. $12. He wheeled it into the garage with this massive grin on his face, like he'd found treasure. That was 8 months ago. Since then, Edward had spent every free hour working on that bike. He researched online, watched videos, saved allowance for parts. I helped when he asked, but mostly I watched. He stripped the rust, sanded the frame, painted it deep blue. He replaced the chain, fixed the brakes, patched the tires. When parts were too expensive, he found alternatives. When something didn't fit, he adjusted and tried again. By early June, the bike was finished. It wasn't perfect. The paint job had a few drips, and one brake pad was slightly misaligned, but it was his. Completely his. He'd built it with his own hands, his own patience, his own money. I was proud in a way that made my chest tight. This kid, my kid, had learned something most adults never figure out. Hard work pays off. Patience matters. You can fix broken things if you're willing to try. I'd been planning to surprise him. His birthday was in 3 weeks, and I'd been saving for months. Not the way I usually saved, where I'd set aside money only to redirect it to Jacob's latest emergency. This time, I'd hidden it. A separate account Jacob didn't know about. $1,500, enough for a really good bike. The kind Edward deserved after proving what he could do with the old one. Then came the family barbecue. Mom hosted Sunday dinners twice a month, weather permitting. This particular Sunday in mid-June was perfect. 75 degrees, clear sky, the kind of day where you could smell cut grass and charcoal. I'd brought potato salad and paid for the steaks, same as always. Jacob showed up with his wife and 3 boys, carrying nothing but appetites and loud voices. Edward brought his bike. He'd asked me that morning if he could, eyes bright with pride. He wanted to show Grandma what he'd accomplished. I said yes. Why wouldn't I? The kid had earned the right to show off a little. We ate first. Burgers and hot dogs for the kids, steaks for the adults. Normal conversation. Mom asked about work. Jacob complained about his boss. His oldest son, Brandon, talked about basketball camp. The camp I'd paid for. Nobody mentioned that part. After lunch, the kids scattered to the backyard. Edward wheeled his bike out, and I watched from the patio as he showed his cousins. He pointed out the paint job, demonstrated the brakes, explained how he'd fixed the gear system. Brandon barely looked. The middle boy, Henry, seemed mildly interested. But the youngest, Gerald, lit up. Gerald was 7, gap-toothed and energetic. He walked around the bike twice, eyes wide. Then he looked at Edward. "Can I ride it?" Edward hesitated. I saw it from across the yard. That moment of conflict. He wanted to be generous. He also knew the bike was fragile in ways only he understood. The brake pad that needed gentle pressure. The gear shift that stuck if you forced it. "Maybe later," Edward said carefully. "It's kind of tricky. I need to adjust a few things first." Gerald's face fell. Before Edward could explain further, Brandon jumped in. "He's being selfish," Brandon announced, loud enough for the adults to hear. "He won't even let Gerald try it." That's when things shifted. Jacob looked over, frowning. Mom set down her iced tea. I felt tension gather in the air like humidity before a storm. Gerald ran to the patio, lower lip trembling. "Edward won't share his bike." Mom's expression hardened. She looked at me, then at Edward, who'd followed his cousin over, face flushed with anxiety. "Edward," Mom said, voice sharp with disappointment. "That's not how we behave in this family. We share." "I was going to let him try it, Grandma," Edward stammered. "I just wanted to make sure everything was safe first. The brakes are kind of sensitive and excuses." Jacob cut him off, leaning back in his chair like a judge delivering a verdict. "You're teaching him to be stingy, Anthony. Kid spends months on a bike just so he can hoard it." Heat flooded my face. I opened my mouth, but Mom spoke first. "I've been thinking," she said, looking directly at me. Her tone carried that specific weight she used when she'd already made a decision and was just informing everyone else. "You mentioned getting Edward a new bike for his birthday." My stomach dropped. I'd mentioned it to her in passing 2 weeks ago, excited, wanting to share my plan. I should have known better. "I don't think he deserves it," Mom continued. "Not if this is how he acts." Refusing to share with his cousin. That old bike taught him the wrong lesson, apparently. Made him selfish. The backyard went quiet. Edward's face crumpled. I watched my son, this kid who'd spent 8 months learning patience and craftsmanship, look at his grandmother with complete betrayal. "That bike isn't a toy," I said, voice low and controlled. "Edward built it himself. Every piece. He has a right to decide. He has a right to learn generosity," Mom interrupted. "And you have a responsibility to teach him. Maybe instead of wasting money on another bike, you could teach him what family means." Jacob nodded, adding his support. "She's right, Anthony. You baby him too much. One kid, all your attention. My boys have to share everything. Teaches them character. Your boys share everything I buy them," I thought. But I didn't say it. Not yet. Edward's hand found mine. I felt him shaking. 11 years old, publicly humiliated for protecting something he'd built with his own hands. I looked at my mother, at my brother, at the family I'd supported for years. Something inside me, something that had been bending for a very long time, finally snapped. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just squeezed Edward's hand and said quietly, "We're leaving." Mom called after us. Jacob muttered something about me being dramatic. I didn't turn around. I loaded Edward's bike into my truck, and we drove home in silence. Edward didn't speak until we pulled into our driveway. When I turned off the engine, he finally looked at me, eyes red but dry. "Am I selfish, Dad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I turned in my seat to face him fully. "No," I said. "You're not selfish. You're careful. There's a difference." He nodded, but I could see doubt lingering. Kids believe what adults tell them, especially adults they're supposed to trust. Grandma had called him selfish, and part of him wondered if it was true. We went inside. I told him to pick a movie, something that would distract us both. He chose an action film we'd seen 3 times already. I wasn't really watching. My mind was spinning through years of memories, pattern after pattern I'd somehow convinced myself was normal. I thought about the time I'd paid for Brandon's birthday party at the arcade. $300, 20 kids, pizza and tokens, and a cake shaped like a basketball. Jacob thanked me, then complained 2 days later that I hadn't contributed to the favor bags. I thought about Henry's broken arm, the emergency room bill I'd covered because Jacob's insurance had a high deductible. $800 transferred without hesitation. Jacob never paid me back, never even brought it up again. I thought about Christmas 3 years ago, when I bought all 3 of my nephew's new bikes. Good ones, not used. I'd spent nearly $1,000 total. Edward got a Lego set and a new winter coat. He'd been thrilled. He didn't know his cousin's gifts cost 5 times what his did. The pattern was clear. I'd just been too close to see it. Or maybe too afraid to see it. Because seeing it meant acknowledging that my family, my mother especially, had decided my role decades ago. Provider. Safety net. Bank account with a heartbeat. My feelings were secondary. My son's feelings didn't even register. Around 8 o'clock, my phone buzzed. Text from Mom. You were rude to leave like that. Call me tomorrow so we can discuss your attitude. My attitude. Not her accusation. Not the public humiliation of my son. My attitude. A second text came through, this one from Jacob. Mom's upset. You know how she gets. Just apologize and move on. Also, did you finalize the barbecue for next month? Gerald's been talking about it nonstop. The barbecue. Right. I'd almost forgotten in the chaos of the afternoon. 2 months ago, Jacob asked if I could help with a summer party for his boys. Something big, he'd said. A celebration. Brandon was graduating elementary school. Henry made the soccer team. Gerald was just Gerald, and that apparently deserved celebration too. I'd agreed, like always. I'd contacted caterers, rented tables, and a bounce house, arranged for a local sports mascot to make an appearance. The budget had climbed to $7,200. I'd planned to pay for all of it. Jacob would host it at his house, take all the credit, and I'd smile and tell everyone I was happy to help. I stared at Jacob's text for a long time. Then I looked at Edward, curled up on the couch, watching explosions on screen but not really seeing them. Something hardened in my chest. A decision forming, cold and clear. I opened my email. Edward fell asleep on the couch around 9:30. I carried him to bed, pulled his blanket up, and watched him for a moment. His face was peaceful in sleep, but I remembered how it had looked in Mom's backyard. Confused, hurt, wondering what he'd done wrong. I went to the kitchen and opened my laptop. For the next 2 hours, I did something I'd never done before. I audited my relationship with my family. Specifically, I tracked every dollar I'd spent on Jacob and his kids over the past 5 years. Bank statements, Venmo transfers, cash withdrawals with notes about what they'd funded. The numbers assembled themselves into a story I'd been living but never really reading. Year 1, $4,800. Baseball league, school supplies, emergency car repair for Jacob, Brandon's birthday party. Year 2, $6,200. Summer camp for 2 nephews, new laptop for Brandon, property tax help for Jacob, Henry's broken arm. Year 3, $7,100. Christmas gifts, spring break trip contribution, basketball camp, emergency dental work for Gerald, new tires for Jacob's van. Year 4, $5,900. Back-to-school shopping, Brandon's class trip to Washington, D.C., emergency plumbing repair at Jacob's house that I did for free but supplied materials for, Gerald's birthday party at the trampoline park. Year 5, current and ongoing. Already at $8,400, and we weren't through summer yet. Basketball camp, soccer team fees, the mascot deposit for the upcoming barbecue, new tablets for remote learning, Easter baskets, Henry's sleepaway camp. Total, $38,000 for $100. In 5 years. For a brother who made decent money and a mother who owned her house outright. I sat back, staring at the screen. $38,000. I could have replaced my truck. I could have taken Edward on a real vacation, the kind with airplanes and hotels. I could have put it toward his college fund. Instead, I'd made sure my nephews had everything while my own son learned to be grateful for Lego sets and thrift store bikes. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the expectation. The assumption that I would always say yes. That my resources, my time, my son's feelings were all secondary to Jacob's needs and Mom's vision of family harmony. I pulled up the email chain with the barbecue caterer. Read through the details. $7,200 for food, setup, and entertainment. Jacob had requested specific menu items, designer cupcakes, a photo booth. He'd treated it like he was planning a wedding, and I'd agreed to every addition. I checked the cancellation policy. If I canceled more than 3 weeks out, I'd get a full refund minus a $200 processing fee. The party was scheduled for 5 weeks from now. My cursor hovered over the reply button. Edward deserved a new bike. A really good one. The kind that would last years. The kind that would tell him his hard work mattered, that his father saw him, that he wasn't selfish for protecting something he'd built. I started typing. The cancellation email was short, professional. I thanked the caterer for their flexibility, confirmed the refund amount, and requested confirmation of the processing fee. I sent it at 11:42 on Sunday night. By Monday morning, I had a response. Cancellation confirmed. $70,000 refunded to my account within 5 business days. I didn't tell Jacob. Not yet. Let him think everything was still on track. Let him keep planning, keep building his kids' expectations. The collapse would be more effective that way. Tuesday afternoon, I picked Edward up from school. He climbed into the truck, backpack slung over one shoulder, and I saw the same dimmed energy he'd carried since Sunday. My bright, curious kid looked tired. How was school? I asked. Fine. One-word answers. That wasn't like him. I made a decision. Want to skip homework for a bit? I need to run an errand, and I could use your help. He perked up slightly. What kind of errand? You'll see. 20 minutes later, we pulled into the parking lot of Revolution Cycles, the high-end bike shop across town. Edward looked at the storefront, at the sleek racing bikes and mountain bikes displayed in the window, and turned to me with wide eyes. Dad, this place is expensive. I know, I said. Come on. Inside, the shop smelled like rubber and metal polish. Bikes lined the walls, organized by type and price range. A salesman approached, mid-30s, wearing a branded polo shirt. Can I help you find something? My son needs a bike, I said. He's been riding a restored one he rebuilt himself, but I want to get him something new. Something quality. The salesman smiled at Edward. You rebuilt a bike yourself? That's impressive. What kind of riding do you like? Edward glanced at me, uncertain. I nodded. Permission. He started talking, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. He liked trail riding, some street, nothing too extreme, but he wanted to learn tricks eventually. The salesman listened, asked questions, and led us to a section of bikes designed for versatility. These are our best all-terrain models, he explained. Durable frames, quality suspension, built to handle different conditions. You can customize components if you want to upgrade later. Edward touched one of the bikes, a blue and silver model with clean lines and professional-grade components. He looked at the price tag and stepped back quickly. Dad, this is way too much. The bike was listed at $1,400. With customization and accessories, it would probably hit $1,800 total. What if you earned it? I asked. You spent 8 months rebuilding that old bike. You proved you know how to take care of equipment. I think you've earned something this good. His eyes filled with hope and disbelief. Really? Really? Pick what you want. For the next hour, Edward worked with the salesman to build his dream bike. Upgraded pedals, better grips, a water bottle holder, LED safety lights, a custom seat. They discussed gear ratios and brake types like colleagues. I watched my son, animated and confident, and felt the tightness in my chest ease slightly. At the register, the total came to $1,943. I handed over my card without hesitation. When can we pick it up? Edward asked. Custom builds take about a week, the salesman said. We'll call when it's ready. In the truck, Edward was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to me, voice small. Thank you, Dad. This is the best thing anyone's ever done for me. I reached over and ruffled his hair. You earned it, buddy. Don't forget that. That evening, I did something calculated. I asked Edward if I could film a short video of him at the bike shop, showing off his choices. He agreed, excited. I edited the footage into a 90-second clip. Edward explaining the features, grinning at the camera, the bike gleaming in the showroom lights. I added text overlay. 8 months of hard work. Earned every piece. I posted it to Facebook. Tagged it visible to family. Then I waited. The video went live at 7:15 on Tuesday evening. By 8 o'clock, it had 32 likes, mostly from co-workers and a few neighbors. By 8:30, the first comment appeared from Mom. That's a very expensive bike. I hope Jacob understands the value of money. Jacob. She only used his full name when she was annoyed. I didn't respond. At 8:45, my phone rang. Jacob. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. I declined it. A text appeared. We need to talk. Call me. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at my kitchen table, phone face down. Edward was in his room, drawing pictures of his new bike, planning routes he wanted to try. His joy was worth every penny. Another call, this time from Mom. I answered. Anthony. Her voice was clipped. I just saw your Facebook post. Okay. That bike looks very expensive. It is. Silence. She was waiting for me to explain, to justify, to apologize for spending my own money on my own son. I didn't. After what happened on Sunday, she continued, voice sharpening, I'm surprised you'd reward that kind of behavior. What behavior? I asked calmly. Edward worked for 8 months to rebuild a bike. He learned patience, problem-solving, and craftsmanship. That deserves recognition. He refused to share with his cousin. He wanted to make sure the bike was safe first. Gerald is 7. That bike has sensitive components. Edward was being responsible, not selfish. That's not what I saw. Mom's tone turned cold. I saw a child who's been spoiled. One kid getting all the attention, while Jacob's boys have to split everything 3 ways. It's not fair, Anthony. The irony was staggering. I almost laughed. You're right, I said. It's not fair, but not in the way you think. Before she could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not with anger. With something clearer. Relief, maybe. The relief of finally stepping off a treadmill I'd been running on for years. My phone exploded with notifications. 3 more calls from Jacob. 2 texts from him. Another call from Mom. I silenced the phone and went to check on Edward. He was in bed, reading a comic book. When I appeared in his doorway, he looked up with a smile that made every uncomfortable conversation worth it. Can we go camping this weekend? He asked. Try out some trails before the bike is ready. Absolutely, I said. Wednesday morning brought a new text from Jacob, sent at 6:30 a.m. Serious question. Did you finalize the barbecue stuff? Caterer confirmed. Kids are already inviting friends. Need to know numbers. I replied at lunch break. About the barbecue. We need to talk. He called immediately. This time I answered. What's going on? Jacob asked. Please tell me you didn't forget to confirm. I canceled it, I said simply. Silence. Complete, shocked silence. You what? I canceled the caterer, the bounce house, the mascot. All of it. You'll get your deposits back in a few days. Why the hell would you do that? His voice climbed. The party is in a month. The kids are expecting it. I already told people, I'm not paying for it. I interrupted. You want a party? You fund it yourself. Anthony, what is this about? Is this because of Sunday? Because Mom said Edward was being selfish. This is about $38,000, I said quietly. That's what I've spent on you and your kids in 5 years. Baseball, camps, parties, emergencies. I added it up, Jacob. Every dollar. I didn't ask you to keep track. You didn't have to ask. You just took. And I gave. Over and over. But I'm done. You're doing this because Mom criticized your kid? That's petty, Anthony. Mom criticized my son for protecting something he spent 8 months building. You agreed with her. Then you texted me asking about a $7,200 party you expected me to fund without even asking if I could afford it. You offered. I did, I agreed. I always offer. I always say yes. But not anymore. So you're punishing my kids because your feelings are hurt. The question should have made me angry. Instead, I felt calm. Cold and calm. I'm teaching my kid what you never taught yours, I said. That hard work gets rewarded. That you don't take from people who care about you without even saying thank you. That family means respect, not just obligation. I hung up before he could respond. The explosion was immediate and comprehensive. Within an hour of my conversation with Jacob, my phone became a battlefield. Mom called 4 times. I declined each one. Jacob sent a paragraph-long text calling me selfish, ungrateful, and a terrible brother. His wife, Stephanie, sent her own message. The boys are devastated. How could you do this to them? They didn't do anything wrong. I responded to that one. Neither did Edward. But that didn't stop your family from publicly humiliating him. She didn't reply. Thursday morning, Mom showed up at my house. I'd just gotten back from a job, boots still muddy, when her car pulled into my driveway. She got out looking stern and determined, the expression she'd worn when I was 13 and she'd caught me skipping school. I met her at the door. Didn't invite her in. We need to discuss your behavior, she started. No, I said. We don't. She blinked. I'd never refused her that directly before. Anthony, you're tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. You told my son he didn't deserve a bike because he wouldn't immediately hand over something he'd spent months building. You took Jacob's side without even asking for Edward's perspective. That's not a misunderstanding. That's favoritism. I don't have favorites. Yes, you do. I kept my voice level. You always have. Jacob needs help, so I provide it. Jacob's kids need things, so I buy them. My kid needs support, and you call him selfish. I'm done pretending that's normal. I raised you better than this, Mom said, voice tight. Family helps family. Then where was the family when Edward needed defending? Where was the help when he got humiliated at a barbecue for being responsible? She didn't have an answer. Or she had one she didn't want to say out loud. I'm not funding Jacob's party, I continued. I'm not apologizing for buying my son a bike. And I'm not discussing this further. If you want to spend time with Edward, you're welcome to visit. But you will respect him. Those are my terms. Mom stared at me for a long moment, face flushed with anger and something that might have been shock. Then she turned and walked back to her car without another word. Friday brought a different tactic. Jacob called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered thinking it might be a client. Anthony, it's me. Don't hang up. I almost did anyway. Instead, I waited. Look, Jacob said, voice strained. I get it. You're upset. Maybe we were too hard on Edward. But canceling the whole party? That's extreme. The kids have been planning this for months. Then you have time to make other arrangements. I can't afford what you were planning. You know that. Then scale it down. Hot dogs and a cake. Kids don't need a mascot and a photo booth to have fun. They've been promised. By you, I interrupted. You promised them a party you couldn't afford, assuming I'd pay for it. That's on you, Jacob. Not me. So you're really going to let my kids suffer because of an argument? The question was designed to make me feel guilty. A year ago, it would have worked. But I'd spent the week watching Edward recover from being called selfish for protecting his hard work. I'd spent the week realizing that my family's definition of support only went one direction. Your kids aren't suffering, I said. They're learning that actions have consequences. You and Mom humiliated my son, so I'm withdrawing my financial support. That's not punishment. That's boundaries. Boundaries, Jacob repeated, voice dripping with sarcasm. That's therapy talk. You sound ridiculous. I sound like someone who finally figured out he's been played for years. Played? I'm your brother. Then act like it, I said. Brothers don't just take. They don't just expect. They don't stand by while their mom tears down their nephew. Silence. Heavy and uncomfortable. The bike really cost $2,000? Jacob finally asked. $1,943. That's insane. For a kid's bike. It's an investment, I said. In my son. In teaching him that his effort matters. That I see him. That he's worth it. I heard Jacob exhale, a sharp, frustrated sound. Mom wants to do a family meeting. Talk this through. There's nothing to talk through. My position is clear. Anthony, I have to go, I lied. Client calling. I hung up, blocked the number he'd called from, went inside, and found Edward making a sandwich. Was that Grandma again? He asked. Uncle Jacob. Edward's face fell slightly. Is he mad about the bike? He's mad I'm not paying for his party. Edward processed that, bread knife in hand. Were you really going to pay for a whole party? I was. Why? Simple question. Complicated answer. Because I thought that's what family did, I said honestly. But I was wrong. Family should be about more than money. Edward nodded slowly. Then he said something that made my chest tight. I'm glad you're my dad. That sentence, 7 simple words, was worth every angry phone call. The following Tuesday, Revolution Cycles called. Edward's bike was ready. We picked it up after school. The salesman had done beautiful work. The blue and silver frame gleamed under the showroom lights, components perfectly aligned, custom seat adjusted to Edward's height. Edward circled it twice, touching the grips and testing the suspension, face glowing with pure joy. Ready to ride? I asked. Can we go right now? We loaded the bike into my truck and drove to Miller's Trail, a 5-mile loop through wooded hills outside town. The parking lot was nearly empty on a weekday afternoon. We unloaded both bikes, mine and Edward's new one, and started riding. Edward was cautious at first, getting used to the responsive brakes and smooth gears. But within 20 minutes, he was flying. He took corners confidently, navigated roots and rocks, laughed when he hit a small jump and caught air. I followed behind, watching him become himself again. The dimmed energy from the past week burned away in the June sun. We stopped at a clearing halfway through the trail. Edward gulped water from his new bottle holder, face flushed and sweaty. This bike is amazing, he said. You're amazing, I corrected. The bike is just a tool. You're the one making it work. He grinned. Can we come back this weekend? Every weekend if you want. We rode the rest of the trail in comfortable silence, just the sound of tires on dirt and birds in the trees. When we got back to the truck, My phone showed 6 missed calls and a dozen texts. I glanced at them, saw Jacob's name, Mom's name, and deleted the notifications without reading. That evening, I got one final message. This time from Jacob's wife, Stephanie. Jacob rescheduled the party. Smaller scale. He's upset, but he'll get over it. I think you were right about some things. Maybe we took advantage. I'm sorry about Edward. He's a good kid. I read it twice. It wasn't a full apology, but it was something. Acknowledgement, at least. I didn't respond. Some things didn't need a response. Over the next month, the dust settled slowly. Mom stopped calling. Jacob's texts became less frequent, then stopped altogether. The family barbecue happened on a smaller scale, funded by Jacob himself. I heard about it through a mutual cousin. Hot dogs, homemade potato salad, a backyard sprinkler. The kids had fun anyway. Edward and I established new routines. Weekend trail rides. Wednesday evening bike maintenance sessions in the garage, where he taught me what he'd learned about gear systems and brake adjustments. We talked more, not about the family drama, but about everything else. School, friends, plans for summer. I saved the money I would have spent on Jacob's emergencies and planned a real vacation for August. Edward wanted to see the Grand Canyon. We booked flights and a hotel. Something just for us. One evening in late July, almost 6 weeks after the barbecue incident, I found Edward in the garage. He was adjusting his old restored bike, the blue one he'd built himself. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Gerald's birthday is next month," Edward said, not looking up from the brake cable he was tightening. "I thought maybe I could give him this one, if he promises to take care of it." I felt something warm and proud expand in my chest. After everything, after being called selfish and watching his family turn on him, Edward still had generosity. But this time, it was his choice. His terms. "I think that's a great idea," I said. "Want help getting it perfect?" "Yeah." We worked together in the quiet garage, tools clinking, radio playing low. Outside, summer evening sounds drifted through the open door. Crickets and distant laughter and the hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. My family was smaller now. Just me and Edward, really. Mom might come around eventually. Jacob might realize what he'd lost. Or they might not. Either way, I'd learned something crucial. Family isn't just blood. It's respect. It's seeing each other. It's celebrating hard work and defending the people you love when they're unfairly attacked. It's knowing your worth and teaching your kids to know theirs. Edward tightened the last bolt on the old bike and stepped back, admiring his work. "Think he'll like it?" he asked. "If he's smart, he'll love it," I said. "You're giving him something you built. That's special." Edward smiled, that bright, unguarded smile I'd been afraid I might never see again after that Sunday barbecue. We locked up the garage and walked inside together. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably another message I wouldn't answer. I ignored it. There were more important things to focus on. Dinner, a movie, planning our Grand Canyon trip. The life I was building with my son, on our terms, with our rules. The life where hard work got rewarded and boundaries got respected, and a kid who spent 8 months restoring a bike got the custom ride he deserved. That life was enough.